David Brewster here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of UFO. And UFO formed in London, England in 1968, went on to become one of the most important and influential rock and hard rock acts, from the late 60s into the 70s. And, Michael Schenker and Paul Chapman and currently, Vinnie Moore and a whole bunch of other guitarists have been in UFO and definitely helped, them kind of create this just energetic and driving hard rock, blues influenced, rock music. So UFO's had 22, studio albums, and they've had something like 14 live albums. So in this lesson, I'm only going to be able to go so far. I can't cover, 22 albums of material. So we're really just going to barely exit the 70s for this lesson. And no offense to Vinnie Moore, who is the current guitarist, and several other guitarists that have played in UFO. But I'm a huge Michael Schenker fan, as I recently posted, on Facebook. And also the era with Paul Chapman on guitar is really good too. And no offense to the other eras of UFO, but we're going to stay in the 70s and just barely hit, 1980. And if you're not really familiar with UFO, you should be. And here's an image to kind of help you understand their importance, because they were very influential. Everybody loved UFO, and they still do. But, back in the day, they literally did kind of kick that door open. And you can hear, like throughout the 70s, the 80s, and beyond, you can hear their influence, because everybody kind of took some of their secrets and kind of stole, some of their ideas. With the opening, that was Natural Thing from No Heavy Petting, and it's just this rocking, power chord riff. Very influential too. That's kind of what I was talking about a second ago. You can hear how riffs like this and songs like this kind of paved the way and influenced bands that came after them. Something like this. It's like a lot going on right there, even though it's just a big, pattern of power chords. But you can hear, tons of songs that kind of sound like that type of riff, and, was influenced by UFO. I think of the Scorpions, I think of, like Motley Crue. There's a whole bunch of bands, that kind of definitely should thank, UFO for their riff ideas. But right there, it's busy, and we're moving from E to G to A right there, and then C, and then to D. And then the first little, kind of fill or tag here is E. And then you repeat that first part again. And then this time just hit that A 3 more times. Repeat it again. Right there, just bounce from, C to D. And then hit that E again. Start the pattern one more time. Right there, go from that C to D, and then the last time, and then right there you just basically hang on that A before it moves into the next part of the song. But that's a killer, song, and definitely the studio version and the live version, they just get my blood pumping. It's like, yeah, that's great. Right up next is Too Hot to Handle from the Lights Out album. Definitely an influential riff and song. Something like this. tons going on here. So power chords mixed with sus chords, which you see that a lot in rock, definitely Van Halen and Kiss, and there's a ton, of rock riffs that have those sus chords thrown in. So there's E with a sus4 right there. A with a sus4 right here. And then D power chord. Just grab that G, kind of bend it a half step, and then hit the low E open. And then back to that E. And then he kind of like, gets funky with that sus4. Something like that. Up next is Pack It Up and Go from the Obsession album, and it's something like this. Killer riff, and definitely has this kind of looped idea that I really like, where it kind of comes around to the intro part again, and that single note riff right there. Really like the way that's put together. And then you've got this bouncy kind of C sharp to D, bouncing off the low E open to that C sharp to that D. Eventually you start bouncing this E power chord with that low E open. And then there you're just basically hitting the low E open, and then that C sharp, low E open, and that D. Keep that rhythm going and go to G. And then go back to that opening, single note riff. Killer song too, I like that tune. Next is the song Gone in the Night, which is from the No Place to Run album. This is Paul Chapman on guitar. Killer guitar riff right here, I like this. The chords there. So there we got an E power chord, and they're just kind of, bouncing on that. And then a D6 right here. And then an A over C sharp right here. And then down to a C sharp, or I'm sorry, a C power chord right here. But I love that progression, that slow mutation of the chord. I love stuff like that. And then it just gets kind of like lazy, just kind of, hanging out with those chords. Up next is the song Money Money, which is also from No Place to Run, so this is also Paul Chapman on guitar. And once again, I think that's from 1980, that album. But once again, the ideas here are very influential. There's a ton of songs that came out after this that kind of borrowed exactly what's going on right here. So right there you can see we're basically playing these droned, single notes with the open A string open, and then we're basically hitting this, D, C sharp, and B right here. So that's going to function as A major, but we're playing with the sus4, which is that D note, and the sus2, which is that B note right there. So that guitar part is almost playing with this. Right? But we're not doing it that way, we're doing it this way. And then when it moves over a set of strings, then you've got the open D string, and then you're moving between G, F sharp, and E right there. It's the same thing. It's going to function as D major, but then you're playing, D sus4 with that G note. And then right there when it goes to E, it's, D sus2. The same thing, but not like that. You're going to do it like this. The last example is from the song Queen of the Deep, and this is from the album Phenomenon, and it's tuned down a half step. And I did notice online a lot of inaccurate transcriptions of this song, and I was in this kind of UFO message board, and there were people like asking, for transcriptions of this song, because I really couldn't find, one that was accurate. So I transcribed the song, and I'm going to share, the right way to play this. So we're tuned down a half step, and the chords are really unusual, which is why, I'm featuring this. But something like this. And that's basically an E sus2 to start right here. And then this is a little different right here. And that's going to be an F sharp minor over A. And then this is really unusual. I think this is the chord that really threw a lot of people off. That's a C flat 5. And then back to that E sus2. Really interesting chord progression, and that's a really cool song. It's, early in UFO's career. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of UFO. And I did fall into a UFO, hole the other day. Posted a couple songs on Facebook, and then my Facebook profile, just blew up. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and make this, kind of a special for Thanksgiving. And I want to thank everybody, for the constant support and views and comments and requests and everything. And I just released my new album, which showed up, on CD the other day. And I felt like this was a cool lesson just to kind of add, to the mix. And UFO is a great band, overlooked. The fans definitely hold on to their music, but they are kind of overlooked and almost forgotten, by a lot of rock and hard rock fans today. So if you're not familiar with UFO, hop on YouTube here and just listen to some of their music. It's great, especially the classic stuff with Schenker and, Paul Chapman. Some of the more recent stuff with Benny Moore. There's some great music there for sure. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to the Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content material. Thank you.